mainstream media would never do this story, so I'm going to do this story. I'm just going to push it up. I'm not necessarily going to do a full-on 10-minute video on it, but I wanted to bring attention to it because I think it's important. All of this talk, or at the very least, there was a little hoopla over a poll that I think it was Chuck Todd did, saying that Bernie Sanders was going to have a hard time. And this poll had Bernie Sanders at the end, the most popular politician in this country. In one poll after the next, and every other poll that comes up, Sanders is either number 1 or number 2, but in this particular poll, he's number 4. Mainstream media doing what mainstream media does. What mainstream media won't show you is that Sanders had parties, grassroots support, sprung up, 400 people or 400 parties all throughout the United States in all 50 states trying to push Sanders to run. Run, Bernie, run. That's what all of them are screaming collectively. If you could pull all of the information up, from this God's perspective, and you can hear just one utterance, one sentence that it represents, it would be 3 short words with an exclamation point. Run, Bernie, run. Mainstream media is not going to tell you about this story, so I'm going to tell you about this story. So this is supporters of Sanders call on him to run for president again. To convince the Vermont senator to go for it, 2020 organizing for Bernie held over 400 house parties nationwide. Supporters for Senator Bernie Sanders held over 400 house parties in 50 states and Puerto Rico on Saturday afternoon, calling for the senator to run for president again in 2020. Sanders maintains that he's considering whether he's the best person to defeat President Donald Trump. Let me read that again. Sanders maintains that he is still considering where he is the best person to beat Donald Trump. But Saturday's show of force arranged by Organizing for Bernie, an upstart group founded by Sanders campaign alumni and grassroots activists, demonstrated one of the senator's biggest advantages if he decides to return to the ring. A network of organizers already familiar with the message and skilled in a do-it-yourself internet organizing. Let's see. Speaking to the house parties by live stream, Kat Bresler, a Bronx public school teacher and co-founder of the group People for Bernie, calling for participants to use social media to show Sanders the scale of his support with the hashtag #RunBernieRun. We need to convince Bernie Sanders to run. He isn't in the race yet, Bresler said. Trust me, Bernie Sanders has already decided whether he's going to run. However, from an optics and political standpoint, this looks good. Emphasizing the policy stakes of Sanders' bid, Bresler added, we need Medicare for all, we need tuition-free college, and we need to abolish immigration and customs enforcement and mass incarceration, enact national marijuana legalization, and all the other reasons why we come to this movement. I love that. I love that. This is not, when they're talking about Beto running in the race, they're like, oh my God, look how much money he raised. Sanders supporters are not here because it's purely Bernie Sanders. They're here because of the things that Sanders says out of his mouth. In this short thing, it's we need Medicare for all, we need expansion, well, they don't say expansion of Social Security, but enact national marijuana legalization, we need to end mass incarceration, we need to abolish ICE, we need tuition-free college. Those are policy considerations, those are policy demands that these people who are getting together. And the majority of the people who support Sanders, particularly his base, part of the reason that they were supporting him wasn't because he had this cool head of hair, wasn't because he was in a dental appointment doing gimmicks like that while he was talking about political stuff. It's because on one stage after the next, every time Sanders got in front of a mic, the only thing he could talk about are these policy initiatives. We need to take this country back from a billionaire class. We need to enact Medicare for all. We need to enact tuition-free college. These are policy considerations. I'm just trying to get to the point across that this is a policy-driven appraisal of what certain people want to get accomplished within the country and the candidate who they believe is most earnest about trying to get those things accomplished. That's what this is. That level of grassroots support is coming entirely from people who want to get shit done. I love this. Let's keep going. I'm not going to keep this one long. Although Sanders and his campaign team were not directly involved in Saturday's events, the House parties were co-sponsored by People for Bernie and Our Revolution, the latter group created to carry on the mission of Sanders in the 2016 campaign. The live stream, which was broadcast by progressive media upstart Act.tv, had attracted over 100,000 views as of Saturday evening. Mainstream media is important, don't misunderstand me. But when you can get 1 million views over the course of, let's say, a few days, let's say hundreds of thousands of views over the course of a few days, you're bypassing the traditional avenues that media once essentially were the gatekeepers. This is important. From Sanders' standpoint, from his perspective, media is somewhat of a problem. It's something that he has to engage with, but ultimately you have a country who's essentially run by millionaires and billionaires. The political space runs on money. They get that money from mostly millionaires and billionaires. The entire framing and perspective that media takes, seeing as the majority of the people who are talking to you on media are millionaires, the people who pay them are billionaires, the companies that engage with them are multi-million, multi-billion dollar companies. I'm saying this place runs on cash. And from his standpoint, he is making an argument that people are more important than cash, which essentially threatens the amount of cash that these people can make. He sees them as a threat, and he should see them as a threat, because the narrative that Sanders will put out will be attacked and vilified with the framing that is going to be off kilter. It is important for him to establish a social media presence and an intermediate presence and have this ability to go around the narrative of mainstream media, which in some respects he is going to consider hostile, because that message will be hostile. Just saying. This is important. Sanders most likely had already made the decision on whether or not Sanders is going to run. From a politics standpoint, however, it looks good to be able to flex your muscle and show that you have support all throughout the United States, and that support has not diminished one iota. Maybe one iota, but not significantly. So, I like this. This is awesome. Here's another piece, and I'll end it on this. Now, everybody, let's see. Now, everybody knows who Sanders is about his program for free college, health care for all, and actually dealing with police violence. He said, I encourage people to take a look at our racial justice platform in 2016. I'm hoping that we will have the campaign so we can really talk about it. They're talking about, at this point, hitting Sanders with this thing that he's not able to accommodate additional races. This racist argument that the Democratic Party, or you could say the Hillary camp, or elements in media that were complicit with this, putting out saying that Sanders did not have a multicultural campaign, or that he wasn't necessarily reaching out to various communities, or he didn't have support among minorities. It was nonsense. It was entire nonsense, political spin. So, in Saturday's live stream, Sanders' allies applied a dual approach to addressing the controversy. On one hand, I'm going to do a separate video on this, talking about the sexual harassment of, I guess, some women were sexually harassed in the Sanders campaign, at least allegedly. And the approach that Sanders is going to take to deal with this, because this is a political issue. I mean, yes, there's reality to the issue, but there's also a politics to how you deal with the issue. In Saturday's live stream, Sanders' allies applied a dual approach to addressing the controversy. On one hand, DeMauro implied that some of the negative stories were the product of ideological-driven efforts to undermine Sanders. Even though Bernie Sanders is not announced yet, the opposition certainly has, said DeMauro, one of the only national labor union leaders to back Sanders in 2016. They're not trying to take out Bernie, they're trying to take out the movement, and that's true. At the same time, Shelley Haley, who worked on Sanders' successful 2018 Senate re-election, told supporters that his campaign had implemented much tougher measures to prevent future workplace issues. I think I said that in a video when I first did it, that you have to take it twofold. That A, you have to essentially denounce it, but also you have to do something about it, which gets across a seriousness within the denunciation. It's a twofold approach. That said, and here's another one. Referring to the 2016 presidential nominee Hillary Clinton, Russell Whitehouse, a progressive activist and internet entrepreneur, said, "It didn't work last time. We ran as centrist last time." But other attendees simply believe that Sanders is the politician most authentically committed to enacting Medicare for all, free college, and dramatic measures needed to combat climate change. "What matters is the policies," said Andy Simpson, a Manhattanite who crossed the East River to attend the party. Asked about other rumored contenders' adoption of some of Sanders' core policy positions, like Medicare for all, Dave Crumbly, a stand-up comic visiting Ohio, replied, "It's lip service." Agreed. "The fact that Bernie Sanders is the only candidate who could inspire this kind of gathering says it all," Alleman said. I agree. This is not because Bernie Sanders is a good-looking guy, not saying he is or not. This is not because Bernie Sanders has this sexual appeal that he rips off his shirt and his muscles are flaring and women are just looking at him like, oh my God, and some men are looking at him. It's like, no, it's not because he has this dynamic look about him. It's because of what he says. It's because of what comes out of his mouth. And it's because people have a certain degree of trust and authenticity of that at the very least he believes what he's saying. Whether he can affect it politically or not is a separate thing about whether he believes it. If he gets up in the morning and he attempts to do what he says he is going to do, that's enough. Don't misunderstand me. I want him to be successful as a politician. I want him to be able to implement these. All of these people who are gathered want him to be able to implement these particular policies. But we acknowledge and understand that there's going to be such thing as political opposition, and that he would have to exceed that political opposition. And I would make the argument that that goes beyond him to us, meaning in the policy itself. A massive movement that gets across to the country a certain seriousness of the situations and the things that we need to do. So my only thing that I want, and I strongly suspect that even though they want the policy objectives, it is more important for them to have this belief that the person is at least trying to do it and actually believes in it, and that is not just giving lip service to an issue, but the person actually full well believes and tries to actually do what's necessary to get those issues over the finish line. So I'm going to end that here. I agree with him that there's nobody else who I believe believes it. They give lip service for political ends, purely for political expedience, to jump from point A to point B to get people to believe that they're going to do X or Y. It's different when you have somebody who's a true believer and who people acknowledges is a true believer. So I'll end that here. If you guys enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support through PayPal or Patreon. Thanks all. And